Right, second point as we are discussing. Free and fair electoral competition, two countries we are going to discuss. They declare themselves as they are following the system of democracy, but we cannot call that as democracy. As I said, free, fair electoral competition should be given. Take an example of China. Right, every one of you know China. In China, they say they are following the system of democracy. And the name of the parliament in China, that is Quangwo Rimin Duiboi Dohoi. This is the name of Chinese name, but in general we call it as National People's Congress. This is the name of the parliament. So in this National People's Congress, the elections will be conducted. There were about 3,000 representatives will represent in the house. But all those 3,000 representatives will be elected by people directly or not, means question mark. Why I am using the word of question mark? Chinese government says all those 3,000 representatives are electing by people. But in reality, those 3,000 people are not electing by the people of China, but 3,000 representatives are electing by Chinese Communist Party or Chinese Communist Party. Chinese Communist Party will elect their or nominate their representatives in the house. Even though they say we are conducting elections, those people only will participate. That means in China, if you want to contest in election, it is must to take the approval from Communist Party of China. If they reject, you are not supposed to contest in elections. Then how can we call that as democracy? Take an example of India. In India, if you want to contest in election, if no party gave ticket to contest on behalf of their political party, you will be allowed to contest in election as an independent candidate. That means every one of we have given political right to participate in the election process, that is contesting in election. But in China it is not possible. So in China, as far as 2002 and 2003, the representatives in National People's Congress, elections were conducted, and in that elections, People's Communist Party of China plus 8 more small parties, and those 8 small parties were approved by Chinese Communist Party. They only contested in elections and they participated, as we know the result, when there was no competition, there was no opposition, they only will win the election and they will occupy the position as member of the house. It was happened. So under that circumstances, how can we call that as a democratic nation? It is a big question mark. That's why it was, those says that is not the real democracy, because there in China, no opposition party is allowing. There was no chance of using their right to vote in a free and fair manner. We are going example as a voter, during the time of election, I am going to the concerned polling booth and I am utilizing my right to vote as for my wish and my will. But in China it is not possible. That's why it is not. Then we go to the second one, Mexico case. Mexico is another interesting point, an interesting topic. Mexico got independence in the year 1930, but till 2000, Mexico was ruled by one political party. The name of the political party, PRI. We have to read this as PRI. The meaning or abbreviation of PRI, Institutional Revolutionary Party. Institutional Revolutionary Party. This is the name of the party. And this party played an important and major role for getting independence to Mexico. That's why they did it. But in democracy, as we know, power cannot be enjoyed by one person for a long time. No one is loser, no one is successor in democracy. Power will be enjoyed one day by one, and another day it will be enjoyed by another person. But in Mexico till 2000, one political party, that is PRI, continued in power. There was no dictatorship, there was no military power, or as we discussed in non-democratic methods, there was no non-democratic government which existed. Mexico followed democracy, that is presidential form of democracy. And the tenure of the president in Mexico 6 years. So 6 years, president will be, so every 6 years election will be conducted. But how can they manage to continue in power till 2000? It means not one person continued all those years. From 1930 to 2000, that party candidate won the election. How it was happened? It's simple. PRI, which succeeded to managing the system in Mexico, they pressurized the government employers to work in favorable to PRI. Example, in Mexico, the teachers who are teaching students in schools, they will influence their parents to vote in favorable to PRI. Second one, during the last minute of election, the polling booth may be shifted from one place to another place, so that many people may not give a chance to use their right to vote or utilize their right to vote. And they even succeeded to managing media. There is a media, but that media never cover any activity of opposition parties. It always criticized opposition parties. It praised the ruling party even though they committed a mistake. In such circumstances, you cannot call that as a democracy. So there was no free and fair election. So under such kind of situation, how can we say that is real democracy? So these two examples of China and Mexico will give a clear idea. When you are not providing an opportunity for voters to come and to vote in a free and fair manner, and that is in the process of electing the government, then we cannot call that as democracy. That's why free and fair election competition is must. And fourth point, one person, one vote, one value. This is one more important point. I hope you people may know and will recollect back that already I explained in 8th class also. In democracy, the countries which are following the system of democracies will follow a principle or a formula that we call as universal adult franchise. What is the meaning of universal adult franchise? As for the constitution of their respective country, the persons who completed a prescribed age will allowed to register their names as voters in the election commission office. They will be granted right to vote, and these registered voters will utilize their right to vote during the time of election for election time, and they will elect their representative. That is called as universal adult franchise. This is the principle should be followed in a democratic nation. In that process, there is no discrimination shown based on caste, religion, creed, gender, etc., etc. Simple is prescribed age. And every voter will be given one vote, and that one vote having one value. That means, take an example, I am a registered voter. The time of election, I will go and I will use my right to vote. And as a single person, I have given only one vote. Because based on my caste, or maybe based on my religion, or maybe based on some other things, my vote was not be given more value. Like me, the other person who is utilizing his right to vote was also giving the same value. There was no difference or showing based on any factor. So value is important. One person, one vote, one value. This is the principle. But in some countries, they are saying they are following the system of democracy, but there is a lot of difference by granting right to vote, or even though they granted right to vote, the value of vote is not equal with other people of that particular country. That we will discuss. Saudi Arabia, Estonia, and third one is Fiji. These three countries. Till recent years, Saudi Arabia is not a democratic nation. Even though they are a democratic nation, women were not granted right to vote. So in Saudi Arabia up to 2016, women were not allowed right to vote. So then how can we call that as a democratic nation? As what I said, the principle based on universal adult franchise. What is the meaning of universal adult franchise? Every person who completed a prescribed age as per their constitution should be granted right to vote irrespective of their caste, religion, gender, creed, etc., etc. But in Saudi Arabia it was not happening. So that is not be called as a. Second one, even though the elected government is there, the elected government doesn't having more powers. The final decisions will be taken by the ruler of Saudi Arabia. So that is not a democracy. Estonia, which is a small nation, the problem in Estonia is, Estonia refused some of the outsiders, we should not call them as outsiders, they came to Estonia and they settled down in Estonia, they lived from generations to generations, but they not accepted to grant right to vote. That is Russians. Russians are the people who migrated or who shifted to Estonia, they settled there. Their grandfathers are also settled there, their fathers were also settled there, they are also living there, but Estonia refused to recognize them as voters. That means they doesn't having a right which can be given like other Estonian people. So they are not following or they are not participating in the process of electing their government in Estonia. Then we cannot call that as. Third one is Fiji. Fiji is also a small nation, an island nation, which is part of Australian continent. In Fiji also the same. The Fiji problem is much related to India. Because long back, that is during the time of British rule on India that we discussed in 8th class, some people were taken to other parts of the world as planeters or planetation workers. Indian people are very familiar with agricultural activities and planetation activities, so that Indian people having very good demand all over the world. So as that, some Indians were also taken back to Fiji, and out of those many went to Fiji, some people settled down there. a few return back, and those who settled generations to generations, they are their own. That means nearly 200 years onwards, or maybe 150 years onwards, they are their own. But the problem in Fiji, a indigenous or a native Fiji be given more value, that means their vote is given more value than an Indian origin Fiji. So that means an Indian origin who settled and who got citizenship in Fiji, they will be granted right to vote, but their vote having not equal with the native Fijians. Then how can you call that as democracy? That is the problem. That's why every person, or one person, one vote, one value is must. Then only we call that as democracy. Otherwise we cannot call that as democracy. And fourth point, rule of law and respect for rights. What is the meaning of rule of law? All people in that particular country should be treated equally. No special recognition or maybe no special treatment to be given. And we should respect, that means the government should respect the rights of the individuals. Like we know in our country, we have fundamental rights that we discussed in 8th class, 7th class also we discussed. As for the fundamental rights, some rights were granted by our country to all we people, and these rights will be protected by the government in the name through constitution. And that means it is very important in democracy, should respect the rights of every individual. But in some countries, they say they are following the system of democracy. There you cannot found this rule of law and respect for rights. That also we will discuss with an example of Zimbabwe. I hope you people are familiar with Zimbabwe. Most of you people are like cricket and all, where Zimbabwe is also one of the country which playing cricket. So Zimbabwe, where it was a person, name of a party called as ZANU-PF. This is the name of the party, and the leader of this ZANU-PF was Robert Mugabe. Till 1979 and 80, Zimbabwe was a colony of Britain, and by 1979 and 80 it was decided to be grant independence to Zimbabwe, and in April 1980 elections were conducted, and Robert Mugabe, who was elected as president of Zimbabwe, as a familiar leader and the person who was forward and who was in fact in front of that liberation movement or independent movement in Zimbabwe, he got more popularity and he was definitely will elect. It was happened. By participating in election and win in election is not a bad thing. In an election, in a democratic manner. He was elected that time in the same manner. But the problem is, he was continued till 2007 in power. That means he was in power 37 years. Recently he was died. When he was left that position, that too not by his own, he was removed from that post of president of Zimbabwe by forcefully. At the time he was 92 years. So 92, 93 years. He wants his wife or maybe son only to become as next president of Zimbabwe. It was strongly opposed by his own party men, and a small a split came out and they forcefully removed Mugabe from the post of president. So 37 years, how he successfully continued the position of president. He played all the tactics to continue. He misused his powers, that is not only the one. He made so many amendments to the constitution. When it got independence, that is Zimbabwe got independent in 1980, many people thought Robert Mugabe can make Zimbabwe as such a democratic nation, can provide everyone as equal rights, and will be implemented rule of law, but that is not happened. There are so many criticisms. Example, in 1990s, Robert Mugabe taken a decision, all the white men who are living in Zimbabwe, their lands will not be no more their lands. That will be taken by the local people. That means that is not the correct method. We will discuss, and you may also know about these points and other lessons also. Take an example of South Africa. South Africa was ruled by the British related white minority government till 1991. Later it got independence. The time of changing power from white minority government to black majority, lot of discussions and debates went on, and leader of black majority, that is Nelson Mandela, made it clear, we are not going to do the same what the white minority did towards black majority. That's why South Africa was continued a great democratic country even now also. But it was not happen the case of Zimbabwe. He forcefully taken the lands of the white minority, and he within the black also he made it so many laws so that no one can question his authority, his power, so that he can continue in power as president. And even rights were also not recognized. Under that circumstances, we cannot call it as a democratic elected government because he misused his powers. All the government is under his control. He made it changes which are favorable to him to continue the position of president of Zimbabwe. So, under that circumstances, we cannot call that government as a democratically elected government where rule of law and respect for rights are be followed. So, these features, as I said, major decisions by elected leaders, free and fair election competition, electoral competition, one person, one vote, one value, rule of law and respect for rights, all these are mandatory to be and to be declared a country which are really following the system of democracy. If any of these was not following, then definitely we can say that that is not the real democracy. For the namesake, they are saying they are following the system of democracy. So here I am going to end the features of democracy. That means we just completed what is democracy. Then we have to discuss why democracy, that we will discuss in next class. Thank you. I hope you people understood. If at all any doubts, you make a call and get the clarifications. Thank you and have a nice day.